The next session is Randy W. Sheckman session. It is named after the scientist Randy W. Sheckman, who received the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 2013 for the discovery of machinery regulating vesicle traffic, a major transport system in our cells. So our chairpersons for this session are Dr. Nitin Rathod from Jamnagar and Dr. Naim Kadri from Ahmedabad. I would request Dr. Nitin Rathod to introduce our first speaker, please. Okay. So our first speaker is Dr. G.R. Sridhar, sir. He is the director at Endocrine and Diabetes Center, Visakhapatnam. He is the former president at RSSDI and ESL. Over to you, G.R. Sridhar, sir.
We hear a lot about artificial intelligence, whether it is diabetes or something else. Let's try to see what artificial intelligence can do to diabetes. And it's not all milk and honey. That's why the organizers have given a hedge saying speak both sides of the coin. Starting from the electronic medical records in individual centers, across the institutions, and a variety of other sources of data, it's possible to collect them and use them for clinical use. As I said, electronic records, the omics data from the genomics, proteomics, metabolomics, as well as the sensors in the hospital. You have the continuous blood pressure monitoring, continuous monitoring of the blood glucose, and then there are also a number of images, either ultrasound or CT or whatever. All these are sources of data, and it's possible for us to use these sources of data to apply the concept of artificial intelligence. So the reason why I didn't have much of strong IR is we didn't have enough of data that can be interpreted. And the constraint lay in the ability to analyze it and put it to appropriate use. It's not enough that you have data, but you must have a hypothesis and you must have the ways in which the information can be analyzed, synthesized, that can be put to use. Koch has described it as said that availability of data has led to unprecedented opportunities and daunting challenges. So the two sides of the coin which the organizers have asked me to focus on. What is the potential scope of artificial intelligence in healthcare and more specifically in diabetes? Some are logical and incremental. For instance, you can identify diabetic retinopathy by using the digital imaging. And interestingly, some others are game changing. For instance, you could identify the risk of heart disease from looking at the images of the eye. All these are work in progress. And as you have more of information and as the creativity goes unbound, there are a number of aspects that can be used. We could look at the overview of artificial intelligence and what is the hierarchy. We speak of deep learning, machine learning, artificial intelligence. Conceptually, you could have at the deepest level the deep learning. The machine learning includes the deep learning, and deep learning, machine learning together, they come under the rubric of artificial intelligence. In practical terms, for a clinician, all these three are used interchangeably in a way. There are still some issues to be resolved. The most important one of which is we have the information and how can you translate these advances into routine clinical practice? And second, how much can you depend on artificial intelligence advice for clinical decisions? And the final one is, do they offer a logical and understandable explanation for the advice that is provided? Because most often it's working in silos. The clinicians provide the data the software person analyzes it, and there has to be a common ground between the two of them for the clinicians to really depend on using the advice that is given by the artificial intelligence system. As things stand, the challenges that are present consists of integrating artificial intelligence tools and platforms. That is, humans use the tools of artificial intelligence and they don't as yet be replaced by these so-called robots or AI. One has to bear in mind. These are only helpful aids for the clinician in his or her work. AI has potential advantages. The errors of diagnosis are reduced. Similarly, treatment mistakes can also be reduced. The workflow is improved, and the doctor has enough time to interact with the patients rather than keep on collecting and analyzing the routine data. So these are all the well-known advantages of using artificial intelligence. But humans have a very, very strong analytical point. Once you take artificial intelligence, you take thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of images or facts for it to learn. Whereas a human can get an association, can get an understanding using limited amount of data. For instance, a child looks at a cat, and the next time he or she looks at a cat, the cat can be identified. Not the machine learning algorithm, which needs tens of thousands of images of cats. And even then, it may confuse a cat with a baby tiger because both of them are similar. And unless it has enough amount of information to differentiate the two, the AI is likely to fail. So the bottom line is machine learning requires a lot more of data. And once you give greater amount of data, the output from machine learning method is better. And of course, machines do not have attention lapses. There's a saying that why was Mr. Agarwal dismissed from the coffee factory? They said because he asked for a tea break. I don't know what happens if he asks for a coffee break. So in the sense that machines don't have these kind of attention lapses. Now, the integration of artificial intelligence into clinical care. Data is stored in electronic medical records. We think that it's a secure source, but unfortunately, these exist in silos. They're limited to a single institution or to a group of institutions. And so data from one, if it has to be transmitted to another one, it has to be converted to a common form. And then it exists in different forms. So we first need to homogenize data from their disparate forms and make them suitable for analysis. This is a very important and difficult aspect of AI. There are indeed some potential concerns. Most models are classifiers. That is, they can tell you that, okay, artificial intelligence can tell that retinopathy is present or not, but it is not able to give a precise prediction in an individual subject. Similarly, it can understand only what information is given to it, and it will not be able to look at other traditional risk factors such as psychological factors, behavioral factors, or socio-economic factors. As a clinician, we make decisions based on the objective data as well as these subjective data. So you need data for the initial training. You need large amount of data. And if it is to be kept current, it needs to be continually fed for validation and improvement. And then you need information that is secure, and one has issues of cybersecurity. Finally, as I said, that usability is often the weakest link. It should be integrated into the clinical workflow. Unless it is done, it will not reap the rewards that it is capable of giving. Look at the various areas in which AI has been used: diabetes, heart disease, cancer, neurological disease, and infections, with diabetes being the most prominent of the areas. What are the applications? Machine learning has been used to cluster the cardiometabolic risk factors. It was able to identify the modifiable risk factors. And once you identify them, it's possible to correct these modifiable factors. They used a logistic regression method to study the relation between risk factors and the cardiometabolic risk. It was also able to identify other factors which can lead to cardiometabolic disorders. It was also able to predict diabetes mellitus by means of a training set comprising of 14 attributes from a hospital physical examination database of 68,000 patients. And they used a variety of software methods. Psychological stress and diabetes, using clinical inputs, biochemical inputs, we were able to predict the psychological states. We used a variety of methods, multi-layer perceptron, support vector regression model. We published it in the Diabetes and Metabolic Syndrome. Basically, what you do is you give the data from the left. There's a black box which evaluates the data, and then it gives the output. There's a proof of concept study in which a small group of people were wearing a healthcare system that wirelessly connected biomonitoring sensor data, and it was able to assess real-time stress levels. And on the basis of the feedback, the person could make suitable changes to avoid stress. This is the most important area in which artificial intelligence is being used. There are large-scale studies which showed that it is feasible to do this, and it is at the threshold of being widely employed. In India, there have been a number of studies by Roy et al. Where they used the RET marker. Pachiyappan et al., they identified retinopathy as well as glaucoma. And they had then validated the performance of the AI system in a recent paper from JAMA Ophthalmology. Fundus cameras are difficult to obtain, and so they are trying to see whether smartphones can be used to identify diabetic retinopathy. Rajalakshmi and al., they have used the smartphone and found a high sensitivity and fairly good specificity using smartphones to identify retinopathy. Natarajan et al. Have also used the smartphone with a fairly high sensitivity and specificity. They also try to see whether the progression of diabetic retinopathy can be used to predict the progression. Ting have identified risk factors in the prevalence of diabetic retinopathy by means of screening artificial intelligence. And they found that it was similar to what we humans can do it, but it's only easier by means of the machine. And it took a very short time to identify the risk factors compared to humans. Surprisingly, it's possible to also identify macular edema, glaucoma, and papillary edema, which are often associated with diabetes mellitus, by means of using the retinal images. And they had used a method to differentiate individuals who have diabetes from those who don't have diabetes. So it's only limited by the imagination and creativity of those who use it. So this shows how rapidly the number of publications in diabetes and intelligence have increased. And it could be classed into the learning methods, discovering methods, newer information, and the third one is reasoning. These are the three ways in which it could be used. So the areas of publication is they used artificial intelligence to control blood glucose, avoid hypoglycemia, to predict hypoglycemic occurrence, to show that hyperglycemia can occur, and then to calculate the insulin bolus calculators, risk factor personalization, as I have mentioned, detection of meals, and giving advice on lifestyle. A few examples of the way in which AI is changing diabetes treatment is it can be used in daily management, mainly in the form of smartphone applications and wireless sensors. Here, you can take a picture of the food that is there, and artificial intelligence system will give the information to a server, and then the output is given. For instance, you take a picture of this. The left image shows a picture of the food plate that is snapped. The center image shows the saliency image with different colors that include high and low saliency. And the right image shows the binary saliency map obtained by applying a threshold of the center image. In other words, by taking a picture, you get a feedback of the kind of calories or the kind of glucose that is present. Examples of nutrition estimation of the test data. And it's able to give the information. The person can take that information and decide whether and how much to eat. So you could look at the sensor data, either removable or present there. Then the activity tracker can be there, food diary can be there. All these are integrated, and the final advice is given to the patient as well as to the caregiver. And artificial pancreas has been given the FDA approval earlier this year. So the scope for diabetes is extensive, starting from the individual patient to the doctors, the integration of the patient and the doctors, helping the doctors to save his or her time, and improving the quality of care that is provided. It's a shade of many colors. We have to use it in a proper way so that the advantages of AI are really manifest both for the patient, for the doctor, and ultimately for society. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. G.R. Sridhar.